Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So we got a great interview for you today. I sent Jason Charles over at the Angry Prepper channel some questions, and he obliged and he responded and provided us with some insights as to how to survive the densely populated region of New York City after a major disaster scenario. So enjoy this video, and I'm also going to say, if you do enjoy this video, go and subscribe to his channel. I'm going to post a link in the description. Jason is known by some for being featured on the show Doomsday Preppers, which, you know, tends to paint preppers in a more comical light. But Jason's a pretty level-headed guy. This is a guy who served the city of New York as a first responder for almost 2 decades. And there actually was another documentary that I'm going to link in the description that he partook in, which was much more down-to-earth and an objective portrayal of this man's lifestyle. So go and check it out. Enjoy the video.
Okay guys, so my name is Jason Charles. I am from New York City, as you could somewhat see from the background. To start out, I am an urban prepper or city prepper. My occupation or my job here in New York City is a New York City fireman. I've been doing that for 14 years now. Prior to that, I was an EMT for 4 years, so I've been working with the city for 18 years. Have I had any brushes with death during my time on the job? Yes. I mean, does every fireman and EMT have a brush with death? No. But as an EMT, my brush with death was the World Trade Center. Okay. During the 9/11 attacks, I responded off duty. So am I going to elaborate on that a little more? Maybe down the line in a video I do. But it's not a touchy subject. It's just a long story. My time as a fireman and EMT during a time of crisis, which one was the World Trade Center attacks, the next two probably being Hurricane Sandy and Irene. Now, during those crises, my time as an EMT taught me that people can be very selfish. They could be animals. During the Trade Center, people took advantage of that situation. People took advantage of people's kindness, whether that was charity, or taking advantage of the resources down there, like eating for free massages. Those are minor things, right? And then you had the bigger ones where you had people going through dead people's pockets, taking their money, wallet, and jewelry off the bodies, right? During Hurricane Sandy, you had people, again, looking for free supplies when they didn't need it, taking advantage of charity cases, calling people up saying, hey, this is for these victims. Send me a donation and I'll make sure it gets to them. And people did it out of the kindness of their heart, and they were taking advantage. But the other side of that coin is that people can come together during a disaster. So there are two kinds of people, right? There are people that'll take advantage of the situation, and there are people that'll put it all on the line during that situation and after the situation. A couple of things people should consider when living in a city like New York City. There'll be no supplies when a disaster hits, right? I mean, a really bad major disaster. A bad major disaster hits New York City, you are on your own, right? Food is going to stop coming in, especially if the bridges and tunnels collapse. The other thing you have to contend with is the population of people. It's a lot, right? I think we're up to 10 million now. That's people living in the city. When you're talking about tourists and people coming from Connecticut, Jersey, Pennsylvania, Long Island, it's up around 13, 14 million people. If you're a prepper, do you want to deal with that? A lot of us do not want to deal with that. So being that I was born and raised here, I'm stuck here for another 2 to 5 years because of work. Even then, I can move out of here and live upstate somewhere. That's a long story. But if you're a prepper, moving to a city like this is not recommended. It's like walking through a jungle knowing you're going to get hurt, knowing that you could be, you can catch germs and bacteria and sicknesses, and being a hypochondriac, right? Hypochondriac's not going to walk through a germ-ridden, harmful environment, right? So as a prepper, you wouldn't move to New York City or a high dense population city like this. One of the major hazards of living in New York City during a disaster or prolonged disaster is the breakdown in social order, right? Law and order is going to go out of the window once the cops, firemen, EMTs go home, correction officers too. They go home to protect their family. Now there's no law, there's no order. That is the biggest hazard. So civil unrest is going to be an understatement once law and order is done. The other thing you have to contend with is diseases, right? We live on top of each other. If people start dying and their bodies laying in the street or even in the apartments, that festers bacteria, which turns into disease. Then the other hazard to that is water. We're surrounded by water, but we are surrounded by salt water. So water is definitely going to be another issue. Food is another issue. So there's a lot of hazards that you're going to have to deal with. But again, disease and civil unrest are the two that you are mainly going to contend with when living in a city like New York City. The best way to evacuate from New York City if the roads are jammed are your feet. You're going to have to walk out. Sorry to say, but you won't be able to take your car on the road. But if you do invest in bicycles or electric bikes, that's going to actually get you out of the city a lot faster than walking. So I would suggest if you live in the city and you're a prepper and you have the room, that is important. If you have the room, get a bicycle or an electric bike and pedal your ass out of the city. Now, in my opinion, well, scratch that. From what I've seen, how New York City handles disasters, all cities around the United States cannot handle a major prolonged disaster should it affect more than one state. You got to keep that in mind, right? If another state gets badly damaged by a hurricane, we can deal with that. But once, let's say, 10 states get affected by whatever disaster, prolonged disaster it is, all bets are off. Resources are going to stop coming in. Help is going to stop coming in. Again, the law and order is going to leave to go home and protect their family. So you're going to have to fend for yourself. The city itself is not going to be able to sustain itself. The politicians are going to go home too to protect their family. The mayor is going to be out of the city by what way, who knows? But nonetheless, you're going to be on your own if it's a prolonged disaster and help stops coming. Now, we've seen that small taste of it in Katrina, and we've seen the small disorder that New York City went through during Hurricane Sandy, or Superstorm Sandy, sorry. We saw the little disorder with that. So now take that small incident and magnify it times a million if you have a prolonged disaster happening. What would have to happen for law and order to leave New York City, for first responders to go home? It would be a pandemic, right? A pandemic or a bad hurricane, like a category 4 or 5, would actually wreck this city, right? Would wreck any city, actually, but New York City specifically, it would wreck. If there's no help coming in and the first responders are at home dealing with their problems, you're going to be on your own for a long time, right? Now, if we're thrown into a state of emergency and martial law and we have the guards coming in and things like that, then it'll be fine. But if we don't get that, New York City's pretty much in trouble. First responders, like I said, will abandon their jobs to protect their family. We saw that in Katrina, and people cursed the cops up and down for leaving their posts, but guess what? Your job means nothing if your family's dead. So with that, I employ all first responders in a situation like that to go home, help your family first, then come back out here and make sure everything's squared away. Physical fitness. Physical fitness is a subject in the prepper community that no one wants to talk about because it involves actually doing something. I could sit on my computer all day and read how to prep, watch YouTube channels, order from eBay and Amazon and all those other prepper sites, but none of that matters if your health is shit. If you are not in physical shape to endure the stress that's going to come along with a prolonged disaster, you wasted your time. Overweight people, for example, who are preppers, they have everything they need. But if the stress of the situation is too much for them to bear, their heart can give out, they can die. The healthier you are, the more physically fit you are, the better your body is going to be able to handle that stress. It is that simple. Now, that's not to say if you have some pre-existing condition, the stress induces that ailment and kills you, that's a different story. But we're talking about people who are fairly fine and fairly healthy, they're just a little overweight or very overweight. Physical fitness is a must with preppers. My advice for people living in apartment complexes and storing supplies is get a storage unit. Now, storage units, they're playing this little shitty game now by raising the prices of their storage unit. But nonetheless, it could come in handy, right? So if you have a big enough apartment, utilize the smaller spaces in your apartment to store your goods. I dedicated a whole closet to emergency preps. So in that closet alone, I have about 8 to 9 months, but in my storage unit, I have about probably 6 months, 5 to 6 months, roughly. You can also utilize under your bed, which a lot of people don't use. If you have a off-the-floor couch, you can slide some stuff under there. And like I said, use the corners that you're not using, but make sure it looks nice, because at one point my house looked like a wreck with the stuff I had laying all over the place. So make sure it looks nice and presentable, because when you have people over, you want them to come over and not realize what you have. Home defense and self-defense. Well, take a self-defense class and learn about home defense, right? Learn about, like, for example, if you're going to get a shotgun, know what kind of rounds to use in your shotgun, right? So you're not going to use slugs, you're going to use buckshots, right? Because the slug will go right through the wall, maybe even through the guy, or through the guy and through the wall and hit somebody else. But buckshots won't. Buckshots could kill him, or buckshots can make him regret even walking in your home. For self-defense, it is in everybody's interest to learn some kind of fighting skill, whether that's boxing or MMA or Kung Fu or karate, Taekwondo, whatever it is, learn something. Because not everything is going to be gun to gun or knife to gun or vice versa. It could be hand to hand. I mean, like legit hand to hand combat. Krav Maga, which is my favorite, probably the best go-to because it's realistic and you can defend yourself against a lot of styles with that one style, if that makes any sense. But then again, if you're a good martial artist, you should be able to defend yourself against any style. The percentage of people in New York City that are prepared for a long-term emergency, I would say less than 5%. Now, if you put a poll up online, you'll probably get a way higher number than that, but you have to keep in mind, some of these people here think a couple of cans of soup and a flashlight and a radio is being prepared. So that being said, a true prepper in New York City is probably under 5%. And you know what, and that's even high. The strategies I use during a life and death situation is don't die. One side of that is when you're in the field of work as a fireman, EMT, cop, hell, coal miner, Alaskan crab fisherman, the chances of you dying is great, right? In any one of those jobs. And when you sign up for that job, you know that the possibility is there. That being said, you almost make amends with it, you know. So that part of the equation of the fear of dying doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the fear of other people dying. It is why all of us, firemen, cops, EMTs, is why we all go to war, to make sure people get out of the situation safely and or survive the situation. So as far as dealing with fear, not to say I don't have any, but I rarely get scared during a disaster situation. Only because I know there's two outcomes. You're gonna die or you're gonna survive. That's it. And knowing that lessens my fear, because I know that the possibility of death is there. When you don't know something is when you fear it. But for the most part, most of us know that we can die. Therefore, that fear part is lessened. Won't say completely gone, but lessened. All right, as far as being a prepper and staying in the city, because of my job, I'm staying in the city. But I hope in another 2 years or 5 years, I'm out of here. And the reason why it's 2 or 5, actually it's 2 and 7, sorry. 2 or 7 years. If something better comes along, I'm out of here in 2 years. If not, I'm staying to 7 because it's pension and all that crazy shit that I don't want to get into. But anyway, once I'm out of here, I'm out of here. I'm out of New York City. I'm probably either heading out to PA or out west, Arizona or Texas. I don't have any projects right now other than figuring out a way how to store more water and process water, right? So right now I'm working on processing salt water and turning it into drinking water through distillation. So I got to get this whole setup to create drinking water, drinkable water, right? So keep in mind, when you're distilling water, you need mineral tablets to drop in the water to give it some minerals, because when you distill water, you displace everything, minerals, the salt, heavy metals out of that water, and now you just have regular drinking water, but you do need some minerals in that water. All right, so as far as following me and watching my prepper journey, if you will, you could follow me on The Angry Prepper on YouTube, under The Angry Prepper Urban and The Angry Prepper Outdoors. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. So thanks to the Canadian Prepper for this interview. I appreciate it, and I appreciate those of you watching this video. Thank you.